That girl does not belong in first class. Claire Whitmore said it loudly enough for every passenger in the front cabin to hear. And just like that, the quiet comfort of Aurelia Air Flight 417 disappeared. 16-year-old Nia Bennett looked up from her phone. She sat alone in seat 2A, wearing a charcoal hoodie, clean white sneakers, and a faded navy backpack tucked beneath her feet. Nothing about her suggested trouble. But Claire, seated across the aisle in 3C, stared at Nia as though her presence itself required an explanation. "Excuse me," Nia asked. Claire leaned toward Eric Dalton, the lead flight attendant. "You should check her ticket. I paid almost $3,000 for this seat. I don't appreciate people sneaking up here before takeoff." A few passengers turned. Nia felt their eyes before she saw their faces. Some looked uncomfortable. Others quickly looked away. Eric approached with the polished smile of someone trying to make an accusation sound like customer service. "Young lady, may I see your boarding pass?" Nia unlocked her phone and showed him the digital pass. "First class, seat 2A. Her name appeared clearly beneath it, Nia Bennett. Eric studied the screen longer than necessary. "And some identification?" Nia's expression changed. "I'm 16. Something with your name on it." Across the aisle, Claire folded her arms. "See? This is exactly what I was talking about." Nia slowly reached into her backpack and produced her school ID. Eric compared it to the boarding pass. The names matched. Still, he did not hand it back immediately. "Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here." Now, back to Nia. She held out her hand. "Can I have my ID back, please?" Eric returned it, but instead of walking away, he glanced toward the economy cabin. "There may have been a seating issue. We might need to move you until we straighten this out." Nia looked at the glowing 2A above her seat, then at the boarding pass still displayed on her phone. "There isn't a seating issue." Her voice remained quiet. Claire gave a short laugh. "Honey, adults are trying to solve a problem." That word landed harder than Claire intended. Problem. Nia had heard nothing like it when the white businessman across the aisle boarded wearing sweatpants. Nobody checked his ID twice. Nobody asked how he had gotten there. Nia lowered her eyes to her phone and typed a message with steady fingers. "Mom, something's happening on the plane." 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Before the reply arrived, a younger flight attendant named Megan Price stepped beside Eric with the passenger manifest open on her tablet. She looked at the screen, then at Nia, then back at Eric. Her brow tightened. "Eric," she said quietly, "seat 2A is confirmed. Her ticket is valid." For half a second, the cabin seemed to exhale. Then Claire leaned forward. "I still want her moved." Nia looked directly at her now. No anger. No fear. Just a calm Claire clearly had not expected. "Why?" Claire hesitated. That single word stripped away every excuse she had prepared. Eric glanced at the surrounding passengers as the atmosphere shifted from curiosity to discomfort. Nia's phone finally buzzed. Her mother's reply contained only 5 words. "Stay seated. I'm handling it." Nia placed the phone face down on her lap and settled deeper into seat 2A. She had no idea yet how quickly those 5 words were about to change the entire cabin. Nia kept her eyes on the dark screen of her phone while the cabin slowly returned to motion around her. But the silence was different now. It was no longer peaceful. It carried questions. Eric Dalton remained beside seat 2A with his tablet pressed against his chest, clearly irritated that Megan Price had contradicted him in front of passengers. Claire Whitmore was even less willing to let the matter disappear. "So that is it?" she asked. "You check a screen, and suddenly everything is fine?" Megan looked back at the passenger manifest. "Her reservation is confirmed. She boarded correctly. There is nothing else to resolve." Claire shook her head. A child traveling alone in first class should raise questions. Nia finally looked at her. "Why?" Again, Claire had no immediate answer. Eric stepped between the tension and forced another professional smile. "Miss Bennett, are your parents traveling somewhere else on the aircraft?" "No." "Then who purchased your ticket?" Nia paused. "My mother." Claire gave a small, dismissive laugh. "Of course she did." Megan turned sharply toward her. "Ma'am, her ticket is valid. I heard you the first time." Claire adjusted the sleeve of her cream-colored jacket and looked Nia over once more. "I just find the whole situation unusual. Nia understood exactly what Claire meant by unusual. She had been taught to recognize sentences that wore polite clothing over ugly assumptions. Her mother had warned her about moments like this, not because Danielle Bennett wanted her daughter to expect cruelty, but because she wanted her prepared for people who confused wealth with appearance and privilege with belonging. Nia remembered standing beside Danielle years earlier in an airport lounge when a stranger had assumed her mother was an employee. Danielle had not argued. She had simply smiled and said, "Never spend your dignity proving yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you." Nia had been 11 then. At 16, the lesson suddenly felt heavier. Eric tapped through several screens on his tablet. "I'm trying to keep everyone comfortable." Nia glanced toward Claire. "Everyone." The businessman in seat 1D looked up from his newspaper. A woman near the window stopped adjusting her headphones. Megan lowered her tablet slightly. Eric heard the implication. "That is not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" Nia asked. Her voice never rose. Eric shifted his weight. Claire answered for him. "He means first-class passengers expect a certain environment." This time the businessman in 1D stared directly at Claire. "She is a first-class passenger," he said. Claire frowned. "Nobody asked you." "Nobody needed to." The cabin tightened again. Eric looked toward Megan. "Come with me." They stepped several feet toward the galley, but their voices still carried. "Do not undermine me in front of passengers," Eric whispered. Megan kept her expression controlled. "I read the manifest. That is my job. Your job is to follow my lead, even when the system says she belongs there." Eric stared at her for a long second. "Drop it." Megan did not answer. Back at 2A, Nia's phone buzzed again. Danielle had sent another message. "Do not move seats. Do not argue. Tell me exactly what they say." Nia typed carefully. "They checked my ticket and school identification. A passenger wants me moved. The lead attendant says there may be a seating issue, even though the manifest confirms me." The response came almost immediately. "Understood." Nia slipped the phone into her hoodie pocket. She did not know that Danielle was already inside a black sedan less than 15 minutes from the airport, or that 3 senior executives from Aurelia Air had just received the same unexpected message from their chief executive officer. Nia only knew what her mother had told her to do. Stay seated. So she did. Claire watched her with growing frustration, apparently mistaking stillness for weakness. "You are really going to sit there after making everyone uncomfortable?" she asked. Nia turned toward her slowly. "I was sitting here before anyone was uncomfortable." Claire's face tightened. Nia held her gaze. "The only thing that changed was that you noticed me." Claire stared at Nia as if the answer had embarrassed her more than an argument ever could. Around them, the first-class cabin had become unusually attentive. Nobody was pretending not to listen anymore. Eric returned from the galley with Megan several steps behind him, and whatever private conversation they had shared had clearly changed nothing. His expression was tighter now, his patience thinner. "Miss Bennett, I need to ask you one more time to cooperate while we resolve this." Nia looked at him. "Resolve what?" Eric glanced toward Claire before answering. "A passenger has raised concerns about the seating arrangement. My seat is confirmed." "I understand that." Megan confirmed it too. Eric lowered his voice. "This is about keeping the cabin calm." Nia looked across the aisle at Claire, who sat comfortably with her arms folded. "Then why am I the person you keep questioning?" The businessman in seat 1D slowly lowered his newspaper again. Eric ignored him. "We have an open seat in the main cabin. I can arrange for you to sit there temporarily until we finish reviewing everything." Megan immediately stepped forward. "Eric, there is nothing left to review." He turned toward her. "I told you to let me handle this. The boarding record is clear." Megan raised the tablet just enough for him to see it. Nia Bennett. Seat 2A. Confirmed purchase. Confirmed check-in. Confirmed boarding scan. No duplicate passenger. No reassignment. Claire sighed dramatically. "This is ridiculous. I paid for first class because I wanted a peaceful flight, not a debate." The woman by the window finally spoke. "She was peaceful until you complained about her." Claire looked offended. "I am allowed to notice when something seems wrong." Nia felt those words settle over the cabin. Something seems wrong. Not the ticket. Not the manifest. Not the boarding scan. Her. Eric reached for the overhead service panel and checked the seat information again, searching for an error that was not there. "Miss Bennett, perhaps moving temporarily would simply be easier." "For who?" Nia asked. Eric stopped. She did not sound angry. That made the question harder to escape. Claire leaned toward the aisle. Young lady, you should learn when adults are trying to help you. Nia turned toward her. You have not tried to help me once. Claire's lips tightened. I was protecting what I paid for. You paid for seat 3C, Nia said. I am sitting in 2A. A quiet sound of approval came from somewhere behind them. Eric's face reddened. Enough. We are not turning this into a confrontation. Megan stared at him in disbelief. She is not confronting anyone. She is answering questions you keep asking. Eric stepped closer to Megan and lowered his voice, but the cabin was quiet enough that several passengers still heard him. You are a junior flight attendant. Remember that. Megan swallowed, but she did not step away. I remember exactly what my job is. She looked toward Nia. It includes treating every passenger fairly. Claire shook her head. There it is. Now suddenly this is about fairness. The businessman in 1D answered before Nia could. It became about fairness the moment a valid passenger was asked to leave her seat because you decided she looked out of place. Claire opened her mouth, then closed it. Nia's phone vibrated inside her pocket. She pulled it out beneath the edge of the armrest. Her mother had sent a new message. I have notified operations. Stay calm. Nia read it twice. Then Eric's tablet chimed. A notification appeared across the top of his screen. He frowned and tapped it. Megan watched his face change. What is it? She asked. Eric did not answer. Another notification arrived. Then another. The color drained from his expression as he read the sender. Aurelia Air Executive Operations. Nia quietly locked her phone. For the first time since Claire had complained, Eric was no longer looking at Nia like she was the problem. He was looking at his own screen like the problem had just learned his name. Eric read the message again, then quickly lowered his tablet as though hiding the screen could somehow erase what had appeared on it. Megan noticed immediately. What did operations say? Eric looked toward the galley. Nothing that concerns you. Another alert sounded before he could move. This time Megan saw enough of the screen to read the instruction. Do not relocate passenger in seat 2A, she said aloud. The words traveled through the cabin. Claire straightened in 3C. The businessman in 1D raised an eyebrow. Nia remained still. Eric turned sharply toward Megan. I did not ask you to read my messages. It is an operational instruction about a passenger you were trying to move. Megan opened her own tablet and refreshed the manifest. Her expression changed. There is an executive protection flag attached to seat 2A now. Eric stared at her. That was not there before. It is there now. Claire gave an impatient sigh. What does that even mean? She complained to somebody. Nia said nothing. She could feel her phone resting inside her hoodie pocket, but she did not reach for it. Her mother had told her to stay calm, and Nia understood that calm did not mean surrender. It meant refusing to let someone else control the temperature of the room. Megan stepped closer to seat 2A. Nia, I want to apologize. Your boarding pass was valid from the beginning. You should never have been asked to move. Eric's jaw tightened. Megan. She ignored him. You did everything correctly. Nia looked up at her. Thank you. 2 simple words, but they shifted something in Megan. Until that moment, she had been speaking carefully, as if truth required permission from someone with a higher rank. Now she turned toward Eric. We need to stop this. Claire laughed once. Stop what? I asked a reasonable question. Megan faced her. You complained about her before anyone found a problem with her ticket. Because the situation looked suspicious. What looked suspicious? Claire hesitated. Megan waited. The cabin waited with her. She is 16, Claire finally said. Teenagers do not usually fly alone up here. Megan glanced toward the manifest. We have another passenger under 18 in first class today. Claire blinked. What? Megan pointed several rows back without identifying the passenger. You did not complain about that person. Silence spread across the cabin with uncomfortable precision. Nia watched Claire's confidence flicker. The woman by the window shook her head slowly. There it is, she murmured. Eric stepped forward. We are done discussing this publicly. No, the businessman in 1D said. You were comfortable questioning the girl publicly. You can correct the mistake publicly. Eric looked toward him. Sir, please let the crew handle this. Your crew member is handling it. You keep stopping her. Megan took a breath. I saw Nia's name on the manifest before boarding. I saw her pass scanned correctly at the door. There was never a seating problem. Claire looked at Eric. You told me there might have been. Megan answered instead. Because he was looking for one after you complained. Eric's face hardened. That is enough. Then the cabin phone rang from the forward galley. not the soft chime of a passenger call button. A direct operations line. Eric froze for half a second before walking toward it. Megan followed at a distance. He picked up the receiver. This is lead flight attendant Eric Dalton. His posture changed almost immediately. Yes, she is still in 2A. He listened. No, she has not been moved. Another pause. I understand. His voice had lost its authority. Yes, I understand completely. When he returned the receiver, Megan looked through the open aircraft door toward the jet bridge. 3 people in dark business attire were approaching from the terminal. Behind them walked a tall black woman in a tailored navy suit, moving with the quiet certainty of someone who did not need to hurry to command attention. Nia saw her and finally allowed herself one small breath of relief. Claire followed Nia's gaze. Who is that? She asked. Nia looked at her mother approaching the aircraft and answered softly. The person you should have never needed to meet for me to deserve respect. Danielle Bennett was still several yards from the aircraft door when Eric stepped back into the cabin and made a decision that turned a bad situation into something far worse. Miss Bennett, I need your backpack removed from the seat area while we complete this review. Nia looked down at the navy bag beneath her feet. Why? Because I am responsible for this cabin. My backpack is under the seat exactly where it is supposed to be. Megan glanced at Eric. Operations already told us not to relocate her. I said the bag, not the passenger. He reached down and lifted the backpack before Nia could respond. There was nothing aggressive in the movement, but the assumption behind it was unmistakable. He had decided that because he wore the uniform, everything around Nia could be controlled without her consent. Nia stood and calmly held out her hand. Please give me my bag. Claire watched from across the aisle. Maybe if you had cooperated from the beginning, none of this would have happened. Nia turned toward her. For the first time, the calm in her face carried something heavier than patience. I showed my ticket. I showed my identification. I answered every question. What exactly did I refuse to do? Claire opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Eric placed the backpack on an empty service counter near the galley. That small distance, barely 10 feet, pulled an old memory through Nia's mind. She was 12, standing beside her mother at a luxury department store in Chicago. A sales associate had followed them through 3 departments, watching every item Danielle touched. Nia had whispered, "Why does she keep following us?" Danielle had looked down at her daughter and answered quietly, "Because some people decide who you are before you speak. Never let their decision become yours." For years later, Nia understood the lesson differently. Dignity was not staying silent because you were afraid. Dignity was knowing when you did not need to perform anger to prove that something was wrong. She stepped into the aisle. "I would like my backpack returned to me." Megan immediately retrieved it and handed it over. "Of course." Eric stared at her. "Megan, I am giving you a direct instruction to step back." Megan did not move, and operations gave us a direct instruction to leave seat 2A alone. Claire stood now, her frustration finally overcoming the polished restraint she had carried since boarding. "This is unbelievable. We are delaying an entire flight over one girl who should know her place." The words landed with such clarity that nobody could pretend they had misunderstood them. The woman by the window closed her eyes for a second. The businessman in 1D folded his newspaper completely and placed it on his lap. Megan stared at Claire. Eric said nothing. Nia felt her fingers tighten around the strap of her backpack, then deliberately relax. "My place?" she asked. Claire realized too late what she had said. "That is not what I meant." "Then tell me what you meant." Claire looked around and discovered that the cabin was no longer on her side, if it ever had been. "I meant your assigned place." Nia pointed toward the illuminated number above her seat. "That is 2A. The businessman in 1D nodded once. "And she has been there the entire time." Eric looked toward the aircraft door, clearly searching for an escape from the moment. Instead, he saw Danielle entering the plane. 2 Aurelia Air executives followed her, along with a senior operations manager carrying a tablet. Danielle's eyes moved across the cabin and found Nia immediately. She saw the backpack clutched against her daughter's chest. She saw Megan standing beside her. She saw Eric frozen near the galley and Claire standing across the aisle. Danielle did not rush forward. She walked toward them slowly, each step controlled. Nia remembered another lesson from her mother. Power does not always announce itself. Sometimes it simply enters the room and waits for the truth to reveal who deserves it. Danielle stopped beside seat 2A and looked directly at her daughter. Are you all right? Nia nodded. I am now. Danielle touched the top of the seat, then turned toward Eric. Tell me exactly why my daughter was asked to leave the seat she purchased. Eric blinked. Ma'am, this is an internal airline matter. Danielle's expression did not change. Behind her, the senior operations manager lowered his eyes. Claire exhaled impatiently. Your daughter caused a misunderstanding, and the crew was handling it. Danielle slowly turned toward Claire. No, she said. My daughter was sitting quietly. The misunderstanding began when you decided that was something she needed to justify. Claire's expression tightened, but Danielle did not wait for an answer. She turned back to Eric. Start from the beginning. Eric glanced at the three executives behind her, then toward Megan, as if hoping someone would interrupt. Nobody did. A passenger raised a concern about the seating arrangement. I followed procedure. Danielle's eyes stayed on him. Which procedure requires additional scrutiny after a boarding pass, identification, manifest, and boarding scan all confirm the same passenger? Eric hesitated. I was trying to prevent disruption. My daughter was sitting quietly. Danielle looked toward Nia. Were you asked to move? Yes. After Megan confirmed your reservation? Yes. Were you asked for identification? Yes. Was anyone else in first class asked for additional identification after boarding? Eric said nothing. The senior operations manager behind Danielle opened his tablet. Not according to the cabin report. Claire stepped forward. This is getting completely out of proportion. I made a complaint. Customers are allowed to complain. Danielle turned toward her. You are allowed to raise a legitimate service concern. You are not entitled to decide another passenger is suspicious because she does not match your personal picture of who belongs in first class. Claire's face reddened. You are twisting my words. Then we can use your exact words. Megan lifted her tablet. Her voice was steadier now. She said Nia did not belong in first class. Later, she said Nia should know her place. The cabin went silent again. Claire looked at Eric. Are you going to let an employee speak to me this way? Eric started to answer, but the senior operations manager stepped forward. Mr. Dalton, do not take any further action regarding seat 2A. Executive operations has assumed control of this incident. Eric stared at him. Executive operations? For a seating complaint. Danielle finally removed her phone from her handbag. No. For a discrimination complaint involving a minor, inconsistent application of passenger verification procedures and the failure of a lead crew member to follow a direct instruction from operations. Eric's confidence began to collapse. Who exactly are you? Danielle did not answer yet. Instead, she looked at Megan. Tell me what you witnessed. Megan took a breath. Nia boarded normally. Her pass scanned correctly. She sat in her assigned seat. Miss Whitmore complained before any ticket problem existed. Eric checked Nia's boarding pass and identification. I confirmed the manifest. He still suggested moving her to the main cabin. Operations then instructed us not to relocate her. After that, he removed her backpack from the seat area. Eric interrupted. Temporarily. Danielle looked at him. Without her permission, Eric fell silent. Danielle tapped her phone once. Record Megan's statement with compliance. Preserve the boarding scan, manifest history, crew messages, cabin report, and operations call. One of the executives nodded and began typing. Eric stared at Danielle as recognition slowly fought its way across his face. He looked at the executives, then at the operations manager, then back at her. Danielle, he whispered. Claire frowned. You know her? The businessman in 1D looked from Danielle to the Aurelia Air logo stitched across Eric's uniform, and suddenly his expression changed too. Danielle remained composed. Mr. Dalton, you had several opportunities to correct this. Megan gave you the facts. Operations gave you an instruction. My daughter gave you cooperation. You kept searching for a reason to treat her differently. Eric swallowed. I can explain. You already have. Danielle turned toward Nia. You did exactly what you were supposed to do. Nia nodded, still holding her backpack. Then Danielle faced the cabin again, her voice quiet enough that everyone leaned into the silence to hear it. Now we are going to find out whether this was one bad decision or part of a pattern. Behind her, the executive responsible for compliance looked down at his tablet. His expression sharpened. Danielle, he said, there are previous passenger complaints connected to this crew. Eric went completely still. Danielle did not look surprised. She simply held out her hand for the tablet. Then open every one of them. Danielle took the tablet and read in silence. 3 complaints appeared beneath Eric Dalton's employee record, each written months apart, each describing a different flight, and each carrying language that felt disturbingly familiar. A black college student had been repeatedly asked to confirm his premium seat after boarding. A black businesswoman had been questioned about whether she had entered the correct cabin despite holding a valid first-class ticket. Another passenger reported being encouraged to move because someone nearby claimed to feel uncomfortable. None of the complaints had resulted in formal discipline. Danielle lifted her eyes. "You have seen this before." Eric shook his head quickly. "Those incidents were reviewed." "Reviewed by whom?" The compliance executive checked his tablet. 2 were closed at the cruise supervisor level. 1 was marked as a misunderstanding. Danielle looked at Eric. And today was going to become another misunderstanding. Eric's voice weakened. "That is not fair." Nia looked at him from seat 2A. The irony of those words seemed to settle over everyone at once. Megan stepped forward. "I reported what happened because I knew the ticket was valid. He told me to stop undermining him." Eric turned toward her. "Megan, be careful." Danielle's gaze sharpened. "No, she has been careful long enough. Let her speak." Megan inhaled slowly. When Miss Whitmore complained, Eric did not ask what Nia had done. He immediately asked Nia to prove she belonged here. Even after every system confirmed her seat, he kept looking for another reason to move her. Claire stood beside 3C, suddenly less eager to participate. "I never told him to discriminate against anyone." Danielle faced her. "You told a 16-year-old black girl that she did not belong in first class. You questioned her presence before knowing anything about her. Then you said she should know her place." Claire looked around the cabin. "I chose my words poorly." "Your words were not the beginning of the problem," Danielle said. "Your assumption was." Claire crossed her arms. "And who are you to lecture me?" Eric closed his eyes briefly. Megan looked toward Danielle. The executives behind her became completely still. Danielle stepped closer to Nia and rested one hand gently on the top of seat 2A. "My name is Danielle Bennett." Claire waited, unimpressed. Danielle continued. "I am Nia's mother. I am also the chief executive officer and majority owner of Aurelia Air." Silence fell so completely that the faint hum of the ventilation system suddenly seemed loud. Claire's arms slowly dropped to her sides. Eric stared at the floor. The businessman in 1D leaned back, understanding at last why executive operations had responded within minutes. Claire blinked. "You own the airline?" Danielle looked at the Aurelia Air emblem on the cabin wall, then back at her. "Yes." Eric stepped forward. "Miss Bennett, if I had known who Nia was, I would have handled this differently." Danielle's expression changed for the first time. Not anger. Disappointment. "That is the problem." Eric stopped. Danielle's voice remained low, but every word carried through the cabin. "You should not have needed to know who her mother was. You should not have needed an executive alert. You should not have needed 3 corporate officers standing behind me. Her boarding pass told you everything you needed to know." Nobody interrupted her. She was a passenger with a valid first-class ticket. That should have been enough. Nia watched her mother without speaking. Danielle turned toward Claire. "And you did not humiliate my daughter because you failed to recognize privilege. You targeted her because you believed she had none." Claire looked away. Danielle faced Eric again. "You asked my daughter to leave a seat on an airline I own. But ownership is not why she belonged here." She pointed gently toward 2A. "She belonged here because that was her seat. The moment you forget that dignity does not require status, this uniform stops meaning what this company says it stands for." Eric had no answer. Danielle handed the tablet back to compliance. "Now preserve every record. This is no longer about one flight." The compliance executive nodded and stepped toward the galley, already sending instructions through his tablet. Within seconds, Eric's crew access was placed under administrative restriction pending formal review. The change was almost invisible, just a notification on a screen, but Eric understood exactly what it meant. "You are suspending me?" he asked. Danielle remained beside Nia. "You are being removed from duty for this flight, while compliance investigates today's incident and the previous complaints attached to your record." Eric looked toward Megan. "You know I was trying to manage the cabin." Megan held his gaze. Managing the cabin should never mean deciding one passenger deserves less protection than another. The senior operations manager stepped forward. "Mr. Dalton, another lead flight attendant, is being assigned. Please collect your personal belongings and report to the operations office inside the terminal. Eric looked around the cabin as if searching for someone who might defend him. Nobody spoke. The authority he had carried so confidently minutes earlier had disappeared, not because Danielle had shouted him down, but because the facts had finally been allowed to stand without interruption. Claire suddenly reached for her purse. Well, if this spectacle is finished, I would like to sit down so we can leave. Danielle turned toward her. There is one more matter. Claire froze. The operations manager checked his tablet. Miss Whitmore, the crew has documented repeated harassment of another passenger and your refusal to stop after being corrected. Under Aurelia Air passenger conduct policy, we are asking you to leave this flight. Claire stared at him. You cannot be serious. I am. I paid nearly $3,000 for this ticket. Nia looked down briefly. Those were almost the same words Claire had used when this began, as though the price of her seat had purchased authority over everyone around her. Danielle spoke calmly. A premium ticket buys transportation and service. It does not buy the right to degrade another passenger. Claire looked toward the surrounding travelers. Nobody here actually believes I am some terrible person. The businessman in 1D answered quietly. This was never about deciding what kind of person you are. It is about what you did. Claire's face tightened. The woman by the window nodded. And we all heard it. Claire looked toward Megan. You are really removing me because of a misunderstanding? Megan shook her head. I heard your words clearly. For several seconds, Claire stood motionless. Then she picked up her carry-on and walked toward the aircraft door beside an airport customer service supervisor. No applause followed her. Danielle did not want one. This was not a performance. Accountability did not need celebration to be real. When Claire disappeared into the jet bridge, Danielle turned toward the compliance executive. The previous complaints do not stay buried after today. They will not. Contact every passenger who filed one. Reopen every case connected to this crew. Then expand the review to first-class service complaints from the last 24 months. Eric, still near the galley gathering his belongings, looked up. 24 months? Danielle faced him. If this company has taught employees to recognize wealth more quickly than humanity, then the problem is larger than you. Eric lowered his eyes. Megan remained beside Nia, visibly processing everything that had happened. Danielle turned to her. You spoke when staying quiet would have been easier. Megan shook her head. I should have spoken sooner. Maybe, Danielle said. But you spoke before it was safe for you professionally. That matters. The replacement lead attendant arrived through the aircraft door and quietly introduced herself to operations. The cabin began settling again. Bags returned beneath seats. Phones disappeared into pockets. Conversations softened. Yet something fundamental had changed. Nia sat back down in 2A and placed her backpack beneath the seat in front of her, exactly where it had been before anyone decided she looked out of place. Danielle crouched slightly beside her. Do you still want to take this flight? Nia considered the question, then nodded. Yes. Danielle smiled. Good. Nia looked toward the empty seat where Claire had been sitting. Mom, would all of this have happened if I was not your daughter? Danielle's smile faded. She looked around the cabin, then back at Nia. That is the question this company is going to answer. The question stayed with Danielle as the cabin prepared for departure. She could have answered as a mother, with reassurance and comfort, but Nia deserved something more durable than comfort. She deserved the truth. Danielle took the empty seat across the aisle and looked at her daughter. If you were not my daughter, you still should have been believed when your ticket was confirmed. You still should have been treated with dignity. And someone still should have stopped this. Nia looked toward the window. Outside, baggage carts moved beneath the afternoon light as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Inside, the cabin carried a silence that felt almost reflective. Danielle continued. What happened today became visible because of who I am. That cannot be the standard. Justice cannot depend on whether your mother owns the company. Megan stood near the galley and heard every word. So did the businessman in 1D and the woman by the window. Danielle rose and faced the first-class cabin. I want to say something before this flight leaves. Nobody reached for a phone. Nobody needed to. My daughter was questioned in a seat she legally occupied. Her boarding pass was valid. Her identification matched. The manifest confirmed her. The system confirmed her. Yet she was still treated as though belonging here required one more piece of evidence. Danielle paused. Then I walked onto this aircraft, and suddenly people became careful. Suddenly titles mattered. Suddenly procedures mattered. That should trouble every person in this cabin. Nia watched her mother closely. There was no triumph in Danielle's voice. No satisfaction in watching careers shake or authority change hands. There was only certainty. My daughter deserved respect before anyone knew her last name. She deserved respect before anyone knew who her mother was. She deserved respect when she was simply a 16-year-old black girl sitting quietly in seat 2A. Megan lowered her eyes for a moment. Danielle looked toward her. And when one employee finally trusted the facts more than the pressure around her, the truth became harder to ignore. That is why speaking up matters. Megan nodded. The businessman in 1D said softly, "Thank you." Danielle turned back toward Nia. Companies love to write values on websites and training manuals. Values mean nothing until following them becomes inconvenient. The senior operations manager stood near the aircraft door, listening. Danielle addressed him next. Beginning Monday, I want an independent review of premium cabin complaints, passenger profiling reports, and crew escalation procedures across Aurelia Air. I want the findings presented directly to the board. No complaint gets buried because calling it a misunderstanding is easier. Understood, he said. Danielle returned to her daughter's side. Nia gave a small smile. You really are going to review the whole airline because of this? Danielle shook her head. Not because this happened to you. Because if it happened to you, it may have happened to someone whose mother could not walk through that door. That answer stayed with Nia. The replacement lead attendant announced that boarding was complete. Danielle had another meeting at the airport and would not be traveling. So she leaned down and kissed Nia gently on the forehead. You still comfortable flying alone? Nia smiled. I was never afraid of flying alone. Danielle understood. She squeezed her daughter's hand and walked toward the door. Before stepping into the jet bridge, she turned back once. Nia was still in 2A, hoodie on, backpack beneath the seat, exactly where she had been when the trouble started. Nothing about her had changed. Only what the cabin understood about her had changed. Danielle looked across the passengers and left them with one final thought. Never make someone prove their importance before you offer them dignity. Then she walked off the aircraft. Minutes later, the plane began moving toward the runway. Nia watched the terminal slide past her window and remembered what her mother had taught her years ago. Other people could question her seat, her success, even her right to belong. But their prejudice did not define her place in the world. She did not need to raise her voice. She only needed to refuse to surrender her dignity.